Hello and welcome to another Notch tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at UVs and why they're important for Notch. We're going to start with a very simple object, which is a box. The way UVs work, they take the 3D polygons and project them onto a 2D plane. So it's almost like unfolding the polygons into 2D. And that enables you to do things like creating textures for this model. It enables you to projection map this model in Notch. It enables you to do things like bake the lighting into the model. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to create some very simple UVs on this model. And then we're going to look at making it a second UV set, and we're going to discuss why that's important. So I'm going to start off just making some very simple UVs for this. You can do this in any 3D application. I'm using Max because I've used it for years. You can do it in Maya, C4D, whatever 3D application you're used to. First thing we do is I'm going to do a automatic unwrap for this. I'm going to box map it. So I've now box mapped it. That will generate a UV coordinate for every one of these polygons and stick it onto the texture space. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to open the UV maps, open this up. So this area here represents the texture space, and all the polygons are within that texture space. At the moment it looks like there's just one polygon in there, but in fact if you select them, every face of the mesh is within that space. So every one of these polygons is represented. So these UVs are absolutely perfect if you want to texture this model. So what we're going to do is export this model. I'm just going to call it box. So I've exported it as an FBX, and I'm going to import that into Notch. And when I import, I always reduce this down, and I flip the Z axis so it's all correctly aligned in Notch. This is something you have to specifically do for Max FBX imports. So I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to try to skylight so we can see it. Going to connect that to the root node. I also want to add a shape 3D. I'm going to reorientate the box so it's the right way up. So now we have our box within the scene lit by a skylight. We're going to bake the lighting into this, so we need something a bit more interesting to bake into it. So I'm going to add an environment image. So if I add an environment image here, put the HDRI into there and connect that directly up to the skylight. I'm going to make this ray traced as well, just so that it's a bit more interestingly lit. So here's our model within the scene. At the moment, our model's got the one UV map on it. If we click on the model, these are where the UV maps are, and it has one UV set. And this UV set is working for both the color texture UV set, which is the set you add all the materials to, and then we have the diffuse texture sets, which we use for light maps and things like that, projection mapping. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to add a material. I'm going to add a substance material to here. And I'll just add some rustic planks. And I'm going to drag those in, connect them up to the object. Now you can see that all these planks look absolutely fine. The model looks textured perfectly. You can rotate around and everything looks fine. So the texture size or the texel density of each of these faces is the same. So the texture takes up the same pixel space on each of these polygons. What I want to do now is bake the lighting into this object. So I'm going to get the bake lighting to object node. I'm going to bring that into the scene, and I'm going to hook the bake lighting to object node up to the object. Now in the bake lighting node, you get three choices for your UV channel, and I'm going to just use the original UVs. I'm going to add a post filter light map just so it's a bit more refined when I create the image. I'm going to bake it with 10 refinement passes, just to give you an idea of what happens when you bake it with this UV set or UV layout. So I'm going to bake that now. That's baked immediately. When I rotate the object, you can see that it's completely black. The reason it's black is because all of the UV polygons are overlapping, so they will all share the same bake lighting. And because some of the bake lighting is within shadow, they're all going to share that. Everything on this mesh will be black and completely wrong. As a comparison, I'm going to bake the lighting on the floor surface as well. This will give you a comparison between the lighting on the floor and the lighting on the box to show you that the lighting is actually working. It's just the UVs that aren't. I'll do the same here. I'm going to use the color channel because this has an automatic color channel. I'm just going to bake this and show you that the floor is fine and it's baking completely perfectly. Apart from it needs a bit more refinement, but I just wanted to do it quickly. But it shows the shadows in the right place and there's no black artifacts on the object. We need to go back to our object in Max and we need to give it some proper UV channels. So now we're going to create the second UV channel. So what I'm going to do is add another map channel to the UVs. I'm going to move the original UV set from UV1 into UV2. Going to open up the UV editor. And as you can see, the UV layout is identical. So what we want to do is we want to select all those UVs and we want to repack the UVs so they all sit in their own space within that texture space. That's the UVs repacked. We could rescale the UVs so they fit better, but this can stretch the textures. So what I'm going to do is for this, just leave them as they are. Let's close that down and we're going to export box again. Going to open up Notch. I'm going to re-import that box. And when I re-import it, you'll see there's an extra UV channel. So what I want to do is set the diffuse texture UV set to UV2. And in the UV channel on the bake lighting to object node, I want to set that to diffuse light map. So it uses the second UV channel. Now if we bake again, I'll do it quickly. You can see that when we bake it, all the polygons have their own texture space for the light map. We'll have a quick look at the light map. And as you can see, that is in exactly the same shape as our UVs. So we've got the black piece there is where the base of the box is sitting on the floor. Then we've got the top of the box here. And then we've got all the other sides. These two sides are the shadowed sides. So that is a very quick example of how and why you need to do UVs. UVs are a very important part of model building. I've spent many years in the games industry and we always said that UVs are as important as the mesh itself. If the UVs don't work or are overlapping or wrong, then the model will look rubbish. So it's always important to spend a lot of time on these, or as much time as you can, getting them right. If you don't get them right, then your mesh, no matter how well it's modeled, will never look right when you're trying to do things like bake light maps and things like that. So that's a very quick introduction to UVs. Thank you for watching and keep an eye out for the next Notch tutorial.